Open a terminal, type Git, and you are touching a tool that almost every working programmer on the planet uses every single day. Now here is the part nobody likes to admit. Most of them could not fully explain how it works, and a lot of them quietly think its commands are a confusing mess. I am one of them. And that is exactly what makes Git the most interesting tool in software, because Git did not win by being elegant and it did not win by being easy. It won anyway. This is the story of how a few days of furious, spiteful coding accidentally became the foundation of modern software. To understand why Git exists, you have to understand what Linus Torvalds was willing to tolerate and what he was not. By 2002, the Linux kernel had thousands of contributors firing patches around by email, and Linus was the human bottleneck merging all of it by hand. He needed real version control. But he had nothing but contempt for the options of the era. Tools like CVS and Subversion were centralized, slow, and bad at merging, and Linus has never once been shy about saying so. So he made a choice that infuriated a lot of the free software world. He adopted BitKeeper, a proprietary commercial tool. My honest take, that was a pragmatic decision, and the right one at the time, even though to a lot of people it looked like a betrayal. BitKeeper was distributed. Every developer had a full copy of the history, could work on their own, and feed changes back up the chain. That model fit how the kernel actually worked. Bitmover, the company behind it, let the kernel team use it for free, but with one condition that would matter enormously later. You were not allowed to work on a competing version control tool while you used it. For 3 years it held, with the occasional flame war on the mailing list. Then, in 2005, the whole thing detonated. Andrew Tridgell, the developer famous for reverse engineering the Samba protocol, started poking at how BitKeeper talked over the network, essentially trying to build a free client for it. Larry McVoy, Bitmover's founder, had warned for years that he would pull the free license if anyone did exactly this. He kept his word. The free ride was over, and just like that, the most important open source project in the world had no version control. Here is where most people would panic, or beg, or call a meeting. Linus did none of that. He looked at everything that existed, decided all of it was still garbage, and chose to write his own from scratch, and to write it fast. He started on April 3rd, 2005. He announced it to the world on April 6th. By April 7th, the tool was already hosting its own source code. Sit with that for a second. In the time most teams spent arguing about which tool to migrate to, he had built a working one that was already managing itself. He had 3 non-negotiable goals, and they explain almost everything about why Git feels the way it feels. 1. It had to be fast. Fast enough to handle millions of lines of kernel code without you ever waiting on it. 2. It had to be completely distributed, with no central server that anyone could ever revoke again. That second one is not a technical decision. That is a scar from the BitKeeper breakup, baked permanently into the design. And 3. It had to guarantee integrity. Every commit gets a cryptographic fingerprint, so history physically cannot be changed behind your back. Git does not really store edits the way the old tools did. It stores full snapshots, addressed by their content. That sounds like a small detail, but it is the entire reason branching and merging, the exact thing CVS was miserable at, suddenly became cheap and safe. And then there is the name. Git is British slang for an unpleasant, irritating person. Torvalds explained it like this, and I am quoting him directly. I am an egotistical bastard, and I name all my projects after myself. First Linux, now Git. That single sentence is the whole personality of the tool. This was not designed by a committee, and it was not focus grouped by a brand. It was one stubborn person solving his own problem and not particularly caring what you thought about it. He handed off the project shockingly fast to Junio Hamano in July of 2005, who still leads it today. and version 1.0 shipped that December. And honestly, if the story stopped there, Git would be a respected little tool used by kernel hackers and almost nobody else. Because here is the thing I really need you to sit with. Git on its own is hard. The command line is famously unforgiving. The mental model leaks all over the place. Most people just memorize a few magic commands and pray they never have to do anything unusual. So how did this difficult, prickly tool take over the entire industry? 3 years later, in 2008, 4 developers launched a website built on top of Git, and they called it GitHub. GitHub did the one thing Git could never do for itself. It made Git social, and it quietly hid the sharp edges. All of a sudden, version control was a profile, a place to show off your work, a pull request you could click instead of a command you had to fear. By 2010, GitHub was hosting 1 million repositories. The tool and the platform fed each other until reaching for anything else just felt strange. So what is the actual lesson here? We love to believe that the best designed thing wins. Git is living proof that it often does not work that way. Git won because the underlying ideas were genuinely right, distributed, fast, and tamper-proof, and because a forcing function, a license getting yanked overnight, lit the fire, and because GitHub later made it bearable for ordinary humans. Right primitives plus the right moment plus a friendly layer on top will beat raw polish almost every time. And the final irony? In 2016, BitKeeper, the very tool whose death gave birth to Git, gave up and open sourced itself. By then, nobody needed it. The Git had already won.